You are my linen garment I put on. Lord, you are my linen garment I put on, while I minister to in the inner court. They shall not gird themselves with anything that causes sweat. They shall not gird themselves with anything that causes sweat. Lord, you are my linen garment I put on. Lord, you are my linen garment I put on, while I minister to you in the inner court. Oh, your garments smell of earth and aloe, of acacia. Oh, your garments smell of myrrh and aloe, of acacia, as I minister to you in the inner court.
Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of Becoming a Linenite. Yes, this is the probably 25-part series I'm about to start here. More importantly, this is Making the Armor of Kings, Part 1, Intro. Intro to the Armor of Kings. Now, the linen tablecloth. Obviously, we're gonna get there. I'm gonna do everything I can to not totally lose you guys on every rabbit trail of enthusiasm I have about everything you see here before you. But I have literally been waiting my entire life for this exact moment to come together, and it's sitting on my table. Get ready, because we're gonna talk about how to actually make an armor that is so superior to anything else that exists in the world, it will stop bullets. Yes, actual bullets. Because rubies rock, just like this rock. Guess what? Ruby in my hand, a giant one, the size of my eye. Even bigger, another one the size of my eye. Those are rubies, and the Father literally put those in my hands because I prayed for it, and He is so good. Have you tasted and seen the goodness of our Father? Well, I have, in the form of these brutally hard rocks. Bullet-stopping, fire-stopping rocks. Did you know that? Anyways, we're also going to talk about the shields of the earth. Because guess what? Molten raindrops once rained out of the sky. Did you know that? Where do you think they came from? Better question. What the heck are these things? Sweet, wonderful teardrops? Yes, we're going to talk about the firmament, obviously. Some of you are totally not comfortable with that, but I don't even mind a little bit because our Sword of the Covenant, super comfortable with that. And because of that, we are going to show you guys, truly, how to reconstruct the armor of kings. This book, super fundamentally helpful for teaching us many of the things that we're going to be going through tonight on actually how to build out the armor. This picture, Alexander the Great, obviously a Medusa, Gorgon, false god, idolatry, nonsense. Don't worry about that. We're going to adjust that to deal with some better things to put on your armor than pagan idolatry. That being said, this was my main study guide here, y'all. The Bible. Shocker. It's the sword of truth. If you didn't know that, read it, and you can find out how to make better armor than anything this world has. Truly. So, I am going to do my best to focus in on each and every one of the ingredients that's going to go into building the armor and walk you through why it is the way it is and why this rock is also fundamentally important to understanding the mysteries of the armor. I'm going to go through a long diatribe vibe, probably, about why the pen is mightier than the sword, and, seriously, how to make sapphire bullets. Did you know that? Because if you're going to make sweet sapphire breastplates, you should probably make a way to fight back against the breastplates that are made of sapphire. So we're going to go through all of that, y'all. That being said, I hope you're ready. I hope you have your pants on and your belt of truth girded about your loins. Have you read Jeremiah 13? Go get a girdle made of linen. Come on, there's going to be a lot of passages because the Bible is so chock full of linen. It's superb. I'm obviously wearing linen, and if you don't have your linen on, you clearly haven't taken the linen challenge. So go back to episode 1, Becoming a Linenite. Take the 40-day linen challenge. Fast all the poison fabrics off your body for 40 days and watch what it does to you. It's literally going to change your life. Truly, just like the sword of the covenant. So get ready, gear up, and let's get after this thing. All right, y'all. It's time to get started with our ingredients checklist. First things first, fundamentals to learn about. These wonderful materials right here in front of us today. Now, you're going to have to understand some fundamentals when it comes to rocks. There's a lot of different kinds of rocks out there. Some of you would identify rocks in different ways because most of us have been brainwashed by horrible movies, TV shows, and really good marketing ads from companies like Gibborim and other diamond doofuses. We'll just put it out that way. But we're going to learn about some fundamental things about the differences between hardness and toughness. That's really important when you're looking at armor and some of the properties that crystals, which is predominantly everything you see here, even this, if you didn't know it, that's crystal too. Truly incredible things that are about to go down here. Now, first things first, let's get to the sapphire because it's the most incredible thing in the history of known time, more or less. I may be overstretching things a little bit, but if you look at this, most people, when they're looking at rocks, they don't see anything but a rock, right? But you know what I see here? See that little sheen? Let's see if I can get a nice little, oh yeah. You see that sheen? Shing, swing. That's a crystalline facet. Look at that. Oh, see, these crystals, sapphires, are basically separated into two categories. They come from the same kind of thing called corundum. Corundum can get you a ruby or a sapphire. They're the same kind of thing. They've got the same pawpaw. Do you know what I mean? But it goes into what these other little minerals, micro mineral traces that go into it, other elements like titanium. Titanium gives you more of a blue. It's a blue color. Let's see. See if I find a nice little blue. There's a little blue. Sorry, my fingers are filthy. I've been working in the fields of life and gardens and tomatoes. Welcome to real manhood. It's fantastic. Anyways, you see how this has a couple different colors in it. Let's see if I can really figure out a way to get this to focus. Man, I see why people in all those videos hold their hands up. Well, I'm going to do my best, folks. But you can see there's purple and blue in the same stone. That is a little titanium and sometimes iron. Makes a big difference when it goes into the corundum. And then you get different colors like ruby, which has got like vanadium and other elements in it that gives it this wonderful red hue. It's fantastic. What we're really looking for, though, is corundum. And guess what? The Father sent me to a place where giant corundum comes out of the earth in such prodigious quantities. People literally don't even know what to do with it. I mean that. So we're praying and seeking land, lots of land, so that we can have corundum mines, where we can sift it out of the ground with springs of living water flowing through it. And we can mine this sweet, delicious stone out of the earth, and then we're going to crush it into pieces and emulsify it into a tiny little powder. Wrong word, but we're going to crush it into tiny pieces. Not the big ones, because they're amazing. And they make really good pocket stones that you can sling at your enemy if you ever need to. We'll get to weapons and slings another day. But over here, you see the tiny, what most people are used to when they think of like pretty gemstones, where they're red and they're tiny. And you put them in rings and stuff like that. But out here, most of the rocks, they're not so clear and pretty and crystalline like that. So they have better uses for industrial uses. And we need them for industrial uses, you see, because we want to take these really nice chunks of rock like this, and we're going to crush it into a powder that we can lay into strips of linen. Yes, our linen body armor that we're going to make, that people have been wearing for thousands of years because it actually stops arrows at the time. Spears, swords, javelins, the huge. This book, absolutely incredible. We're just going to slow in on that. Gregory Aldry. Highly recommended. If you're really going to get into it, you're going to need to learn how to reconstruct the linothorax. Have you read about the Breastplate of Righteousness recently? Reference Ephesians 6. Go sharpen your sword, because you got a burr in it. He talks literally about the linothorax. Oh, also, in Revelation 19, maybe 14. Dadgummit, I need to sharpen my sword. Sorry about that. There's these creatures, or people, that come out of Sheol, to avenge. They're an army of Yahweh in his own way. And they bring an unbelievable amount of wreckage in their path. And they have thoraxes, linothoraxes that are sapphire. Look into it, dig into it, because it's meaty and delicious. But this wonderful gentleman did a whole lot of the work for y'all to help you reconstruct ancient linen body armor. That's your template, y'all. You see this? We're going to take strips of linen, reference the tablecloth under us. You're going to cut strips of linen down into a sheet like this. You see these shapes? And then you're going to layer them together. This is how the linothorax used to look in ancient times. Okay, same with your short sword. Oh, and he doesn't have a sword, but his shield and his spear. Now, what's so amazing, he talks about fabrics and glues. So we're going to have a bunch discussing fabrics, glues. We're going to talk about the linen itself, the properties of it. We're going to talk about how to actually epoxy it together, resin it together. This is 2 sheets of linen stuck together, melted down. Okay, glued together, and you just keep stacking them to make a lamination process in order to create 2 pieces that hold together. But as we go in between those layers, we need something that's more robusto. So then our armor has bullet-stopping capacity. Now, this is going to get us into our wonderful pieces of corundum. Corundum has these amazing properties called hardness. It also has incredible heat resistance, or it's just got an extremely high melting point, like thousands of degrees Celsius. Thousands of degrees Celsius. That's really important when you want to deal with fire-breathing dragons. Have you thought about fire-breathing dragons recently? Because you should be. Hold on. Ones like this, perhaps? Yeah. This is my book. I wrote it because the dragon is defeated by the blood of the Lamb, the words of our testimony, and not loving our lives even unto death. If you look closely, there's secret clues hidden in the dragon's scales. You see that? That may just tell you how to defeat the dragon right there. It's all hidden in there, y'all. There's other verses that are hidden in there too. And the ones of redemption up in here. The 2 sticks, Deuteronomy. You read Deuteronomy. Anyways, I'm getting distracted. Fire-breathing dragons. You're going to have to deal with that. So these are some of the ways that we are going to deal with that right now. We are going to use this wonderful recipe of the things you see before us here to create an armor that is like the shields of the earth that Yahweh created for us. So that is going to bring us into a little bit of understanding. We're going to crush these things up. We're going to mix them together with a glue, and then we're going to laminate sheets of linen together, and we are going to build breastplates, greaves. Greaves are things that go on your shins to protect you from all those swift kicks in the shins. You know what I mean? I don't know. Sometimes you get kicked in the shins. Then we are also going to focus on making a shield. And the shield is going to get us all the way down to another rabbit trail of Noah's Ark and the Narra tree. Narra wood, not gopher wood. No gophers making trees. Doesn't happen. But firmament does. So there's something you got to learn now, because we're going to dive into a little bit on the firmament. Those of you, I put out a little video recently in my Becoming a Gibborim series, episode 21, which was titled, How the Mighty Are Fallen. Enoch, Jude, and Saul. Great video. Check it out if you haven't. But I challenged people to identify this stone. And if they did, I told them I would actually put out my armor video. And, shocker, a woman figured it out. Because women, did you know this? You were made to be the armor bearers. Check this out. Reference the history of mankind. Not all the way in here. There's obviously some parenthetical garbage at times listed in there. It happens, y'all. Most professors don't believe the scripture is true. Most unfortunate. Because of that, they're blind and they're fools in different ways. But what they can do for us is help us to figure out amazing things like this. This, y'all, is a Proverbs 31 woman. Have you read Proverbs 31 women lately? Go back to the first video we did on becoming a Linenite. This is the spindle and the distaff. You see this woman right here? She's spinning out that linen from flax fibers. She's making a little thread. Oh, isn't that fancy? What did you think she did with that thread? Made her husband armor. There's her husband. What a studly fella. Don't worry. Hand in him. What's that? Helmet, shield, armor. Isn't this amazing? Women are armor bearers for their husband in such mighty, incredible ways. And he goes through a lot of historical references to that. How the women were able to contribute in a serious way to the provision of their husbands to find the ability to actually cover their bodies from, the worst kind of nightmare, like an arrow, fiery arrows, reference, Ephesians 6. Anyways, we're gonna get back to it. There's his studly looking armor. It's fantastic. We're on our way. You see that linen underskirt he should be wearing? I don't know, it looks like polyester. We gotta deal with that. Anyways, this is an opportunity for us to also diagnose some of our other ingredients that are gonna go into our armor, like this, right here. Someone correctly identified this as Tektites. Very astute observation. Now, Tektites, what in the world is that? You ready for this? Mainstream science, obviously, is gonna tell you a bunch of nonsense lies about meteor impacts and this stuff. Giant meteor, we promise, came down. It also made all the oceans, right? Shh. More toots and garbage coming out of those people. But they gotta learn. The Bible's the truth. Everything else is a lie. Okay, you ready for this? These are a glass. A glass. Not even technically a mineral. This stuff doesn't fit the classification standards of any normal mineral. And it's got some properties I'm gonna need a flashlight to show you about. So hold for a second. Now, what makes this so interesting is this is nothing like volcanic glass. You know, glass that is made when volcanoes erupt. This would be a volcanic glass. This is obsidian. Reference sweet, awesome, tiny Gibborim in training. Sir Lincoln out there who gave me this sweet piece of obsidian that we found. I believe he found this in New Mexico, potentially Arizona. I can't remember. Amazing. Okay, if you notice, it's still got these nice little shiny pieces out of it. This is something that you can break and flake off and creates the sharpest edges possible. You know what you can't create with this man-made creation here? The sharpest edges ever. I mean that. This is not sharper. This will always get a sharper edge. Truly. Go look up surgical blades made of obsidian. It's a cleaner cut against the flesh. People have been using these to make cuts on flesh for a lot longer than people have been using these. And they're better at it still, which is why we always got to go back to the old ways. Look at nature, imitate nature, and you are going to do way better than any of the modernity would try to tell you, because this is an incredible cutting edge. The problem with this, not so good with fire. This has a lot of water molecules trapped inside there. Tiny, tiny bits of molecules, I don't know. A lot of little bits of water are stuck inside this stone, so that when you heat this thing up with like a blowtorch, it explodes like a bomb in your hand. So in case you're needing a tiny little glass-made grenade of the sharpest things known to man, tuck one of these in your pocket, and it may just save your tushkis. But if you tried to make this withstand the fires of dragons, what do you think's gonna happen? Yeah, probably not a good idea. So instead, this led me down the rabbit hole of discovering this amazing thing right here. Now, if you can see that, it's got these beautiful, it's gonna be maybe pretty hard for you all to see, but it's got these little things inside it, little air bubbles and stuff like that, but there is no water. Like, this is basically one of the driest rocks in existence. This has no water in it, but volcanoes, you know, on ground, creating a lot of steam, a lot of water vapor gets stuck in the rock. Oh, it gets stuck in the rock like this. And so when you heat this thing up, kabooski, when you heat these up, they just keep taking it. They take it. You can heat them up darn near forever. You can heat them up a long time, like I think 1700 degrees Celsius. Yeah. It's really, really, really hot. Not quite as hot as Corundum. Corundum is outrageously hot. Diamonds, even hotter, but diamonds, remember, De Beers conspiracy, go look into that another time. Diamonds are no more rare than topaz. This is topaz. I found this yesterday while searching a creek with my daughter. I was sifting a bucket of dirt that I got from somewhere else in a creek with my daughter. But topaz is exactly as rare as diamonds are. And you know what? That's just modern conspiracies running the world, like every kiss begins with K. You ever heard that line? Bunch of nonsense. Anyways, they market it really well, but these are topazes. They're just as rare as diamonds.
I have to interrupt the program really quick because you all need an interlude. There has been a breaking discovery since the time that I filmed this, and, well, today, literally today, there is someone out there, first of all. Same family, by the way, of the woman who discovered this Tektite challenge. When I put the Tektite challenge out there and asked the internet hive mind, if you will, to identify this stone, there was a lady out there, an armor bearer of a mighty Gibborim family, who correctly identified this as Tektite. Now, the second question I asked people was, yes, it's Tektite, but what is it? You see what I did there? Today, you know who helped me figure it out? That woman's son. Check this out. Shout out to you, Everett, champion of the lands where you live. You know where you live. First of all, did you know that children are basically the sharpest arrows known in the history of mankind? Yeah, this mighty Gibborim out there was praying to the Father, Yahweh, creator of the heavens, the stars, the moon. Big hint there. Big hint there. You ever think you've looked up in the sky and seen something that looked kind of like this up there? Oh, wait. Yeah, we're going there. So get this. I get a text from his awesome broski dad. Says, guess what Everett found while praying and asking Yahweh to give him treasures, because behind the scenes, they're like the special forces. You know what I mean? They're already way down the rabbit hole of so woke right now. And they're out there praying and believing that they're going to find some treasures and some shields. And guess what? I'm going to roll in a little few pictures right now. This is what they found. Sweet Moses of the Nile, preserved in an ark basket of glory. Look at these treasures. Yes, that is a golden tektite, or tektite. That's a tektite that's got the most incredible designs ever. He found that sitting on a trail, just waiting for him. Destiny knocking at his door. Guess what? He answered it and found the most incredible specimen of tektite in the middle of North America. I'm not kidding you all. Those they're like never commonly found looking like that in North America, unless you knew the creator of everything. Now, listen, that picture I'm rolling in there, I showed that to Chelsea. And I'm like, honey, have you seen this? Then I tell her a little bit of the testimony. And you know what she said to me? Wow, honey, you know what that looks like? The moon. Yeah, it looks exactly like the moon. Okay, you ready for this? This is a piece of Moldavite, okay? Moldavite, right? They find these commonly in the Czech Republic or Georgia. I'm going to show you something. Tell me. The moon is a semi-translucent disc-like thing. You guys ever wonder why during the day, you ever look up at the moon, guys? You look up at the moon when the moon's in the sky during the day. And, not all the moon's illuminated, bright. But some of the moons, it's like the light's off on part of it. You can see the sky through the moon. You ever wonder why the sky's blue through the moon during the day, but at night, that same patch of darkness is black? It's like it's translucent. You can see through the moon. Do you get this? It's like there's a light inside the moon that turns on partially to give times and seasons. Let me show you this sweet piece of tektite doing the same exact thing perfectly. Okay, let's see. All right, I'll try to set this up. I got really stoked, guys. I'm like shaking with enthusiasm. Okay. Ready for this? Here's my light. Nope, I'm going to hold it the other way. Other hand's here. Ready? Imagine this just moving through the sky. Right. Let's see if I can get it better focus. There we go. Wow, doesn't that look lumpily familiar? Guys, do you get what I'm getting at here? It's like this is pieces of the moon that fell out of the sky. Yes, in a molten state, right? Semi-translucent glass that fell out of the sky. Look at the texture and appearance that this stuff has on it. Okay? It's the exact same as the moon. Like when the light's off, black. Because the sky behind it is black. The firmament, the sapphire firmament behind it. The firmament's sapphire. The moon is tektite. Oh my gosh. Are you ready for this? Do you know why I know this is totally going down? Because look at how it fell from the sky in this raindrop fashion. It's incredible. Now, when could this have happened? Gee, I don't know. Noah's flood? You read the Bible recently, y'all? It says that the fountains of the deep opened up. Now, people mostly assume that's cold water. But let me tell you right now, fountains of the deep are boiling hot. And they ejected so much material directly up into the sky that it literally was like a volcano coming out of the earth. And I think some of that, during the course of the time while it was open, the moon was going over its course over the earth. The moon was literally getting blasted. Pieces of the moon were dripping back down onto the earth while mixing with micro minerals and things like magnesium, iron, aluminum, and titanium. and all these little other trace elements, which you get in the different kinds. It gives you the different colors. Oh, that's not the same. That's all the same color. Like this clear Libyan Sea Glass. Wow, that's shockingly exactly like the color of the moon. But if I turn it to red, it'd be like a blood. Oh, it's not quite as blood red in this light. Well, it's not as blood red as you guys can tell on this camera because my camera's blowing it out. Well, this one will do it better. Yeah, it's like a blood red moon. Think about it, y'all. This is Libyan Sea Glass, by the way. They call this one Libyan Sea Glass. That's the clear version of it. The moon isn't just reflecting sunlight, you guys. That's why the moon gives off its own light. It says in the Bible, she gives off her light. It's her own light, and it's cold. It's measurably cold. You can take a thermometer, mercury, that kind of stuff. You can take that out in moonlight, full moonlight, and it'll be cold light coming off the moon. It's different than the sun. Shockably, measurably so. Now, this is what the Libyan Sea Glass looks like when it's not illuminated. Now, this stuff they find in the deserts all over Libya. My theory is as the moon was going over its circuit, as it was getting blasted, and you could probably trace, based off of the time of the seasons from when Noah's flood was, a path of where likely fall patterns were when the moon was going on its circuit during the time of Noah's flood. That's my theory. Now it's up to all of you to go literally find it everywhere you need. Go pray to the Father. He will give it to you. And I know that because it's literally sitting in front of your face. Have you ever seen so lovely things? Come on. Looks like some familiar old pits and valleys and impact craters. No! Impact craters from the earth, shooting their stuff right up into that moon cavity. Yep. Thank you, Everett, you mighty Gibborim. Go find your own. Earn your testimony.
That being said, these are not so clear. This stuff was made in an environment where there was no water, like none, which only occurs way up in the stinking heavens. Do you know what I mean? Way up in the sky. Then it literally melted, and it was in a molten state when it came down to the earth and fell like rain everywhere. You can look up microtektites. They find these things just filling the seafloor. They're just covering it. North America has it. Asia has it. Even the deserts of the middle of nowhere, Libya. These are called Libyan Sea Glass. Libyan Sea Glass. These are all Tektites. Different forms of them and different versions of them. Clear. The clarity, once again, the determining factor of what makes this red versus what makes this blue, all has to do with different metal oxides that end up in there. This is, as you can see, they call them thumbprint Tektites. Pretty cool how they fall. I've always carried these around in my pocket. I like to rub them because it feels amazing to touch something so wonderful. Now, they have that same kind of, let's see. Maybe I'll try that. But you can see it's green, like my tablecloth. Isn't that amazing? These are a little pricier when it comes to some of these things, but they have these little micro inclusions, make them very, very special. So what we're going to be doing is walking you guys through me crushing these into a bunch of pieces and mixing them in with pieces like this and creating a super heat resistant and incredibly hard material that we apply to something soft and supple like linen, and then we make ourselves a wonderful armor out of it. Now, obviously, there's going to be some experimentation here because we don't really have the recipe to the glues that they use to make the laminates like in Hinder time. Really, we don't have a clue how they made the glue in order to make their body armor stick together, but also not fall apart in water. Because what they use in this book is rabbit glue. They used rabbit glue because, well, it's something they definitely know was used in those times in order to make laminates for linen, but they don't know what the recipe was. I believe they had to even add a little bit of vinegar to stop molding because molding became a serious issue. But there's a lot of vinegar additives to different glues in history, and that's probably why. So you see, people were smarter back then. No, really. If you didn't know that, it's because you haven't read the Bible. Once again, fundamental problems. People were a lot smarter then. We've gotten dull and dumb because we've converted ourselves to the systems of Babylon instead of the systems of our king. But I digress. Today, we're going to try to also figure out the glue. Maybe not just this moment. I believe that this pitch, the same thing Noah used to seal the ark inside and out, and Moses' mother used to seal his little ark, I think pitch is going to be one of our fundamental ingredients. And this is the resin from before the flood. This is, if you didn't know it, amber. Amber is sap that is petrified. It's turned into a fossil. You can rosin your bow with it. Go read chapter 26, I think, of my book, where I talk about that. And Danny, it's a brutal chapter. Most of you are going to be unhappy that you read it, but it's good for your soul to understand the realities of life and overcoming and victory and deliverance. Anyways, this we're going to grind up into tiny pieces and try to turn into pitch. We're going to mix this, which is tree sap, basically, or you could use modern tree sap, but I think I want to try to use this ancient tree sap, grind it up, and mix it with charcoal or carbon, and then we're going to make a glue out of it. I'm also going to try the rabbit glue. I'm also going to try some 2-part epoxy resins. This is what you use to like make a bar top, you know, like a clear, oh, look at all those terrifying ingredients that are in this thing. Basically, this will kill you if you screw around with it, which makes me not so enthused to put it on my body on a regular basis. But I'm going to experiment with all this stuff and let you guys watch along as I try it. I'm not going to eat it, obviously, but the linen, you should be, because it's so good for you. First thing I'm going to start out by making, y'all, is knife scales. Because, okay, knives, yes, have scales. Just like, what? I don't know. Your armor should. Your armor needs to have scales on it. So I'm going to start out by putting some sweet scales. Scales are like the handles, another word for handle area that your hand actually touches, this piece of wood here. I made this knife with an amazing Gibborim from Canada. Brian, shout out to you, you studly warrior of the North. My goodness, your steel was sharp. I'm so thankful that your forge was hot too. And we could heat up, was a truck spring steel that we heated up. Maybe I'll roll in some clips of this process. I went and spoke at a conference in Canada when it was my first international invite to a conference to speak at, which was called Truth Quest Calgary. Amazing, absolutely spectacular time. I did a talk there called, oh man, I just lost it. Name escapes me. I'll put a little link in here at some point in there to, Worth Dying, nope, I don't remember. Dadgummit. I can't remember at this moment. But anyways, I give a talk there dealing with a lot of this stuff. But after that, I had a day, 1 day extra, 2 days extra actually. And I went around with Robbie Davidson and Jared Cressman. And we went and did a cold polar plunge. We smashed our way through ice to sit in the stinking freezing cold and do a little cold thermogenesis.
Freezing.
Oh, I'm getting the endorphin rush.
It's fantastic.
Dude, I'm just getting that rush of endorphins right now.
No, it's anti-inflammatory.
You're gonna be hooked, dude. You're gonna be so addicted now.
Oh, no, I'm not. I won't, but I might. All right.
You're definitely at 3 minutes now.
I know.
You're definitely at 3.
Good. Very
That's incredible, dude. That was absolutely epically incredible. You okay, Nathan?
Oh, yeah.
Look at Nathan. He's like still in there, man.
I gotta wait till he's all the way out so I earn it.
Wow,
He's
dude.
never done it before, so.
Dude.
Something
Nah,
like
dude.
that. No, man, we're earning life.
Tell him what it is, Jared.
Cold thermogenesis, baby.
Thermogenics.
And Jared just completely cut his feet to ribbons, smashing his way through the ice.
Son of a gun, I want to cuss. I want to cuss, man. I want to cuss. Holy moly, that's quite the feeling.
Hey, no, Jared.
That's quite the feeling. Yeah.
Oh my God, I feel it.
Kind of a burning sensation.
It's going away a little bit, but yeah.
It's been little ice wall challenges up in here.
All caught up in Canada.
Everybody's all caught up in Canada.
It was an amazing time, and the next day I got to go forge a knife. One of my life dreams. Not forge, sorry. Technically, just make a knife. I didn't hammer this out with. Yeah, we hammered it. We heated it up and hammered it because truck springs are curved.
Get there.
But we need it so that the making still sticks to it, so it's not hot enough. You gotta go. See, it's not sticking on the ends. Get there.
glad he got gloves.
I gotta put a glove on.
At least one.
At least one. Okay, ready?
Yep.
We're ready.
But we made this knife, always one of my dreams, and then I sanded it into this wonderful shape so it fits my hand like perfectly and I can let go and it doesn't fall out. Isn't that just great? But the last stage of it, I never really got to totally finish the knife. I still haven't really, and that's okay. That's life. The last stage of it though was to add handles, and the handles that we had available was some Brazilian fence posts that somebody else had a story about. I don't know anything about them, but I wanted to change those out. I'm going to grind these off and I'm going to make the linen scale armor. We're going to make our first edition of linen armor, and I'm going to do knife handles with it, sword handles, and machete handles, because I'm a farmer now. I don't use my machete for hacking limbs off of anything but branches and vines and briars and thistles and thorns, the usual. That being said, we're going to make some sweet armor scales, and we're going to do some proof of concepts on it. And so I'm going to start out by making some blocks that we can set over this and then grind into shape and then screw together, or potentially just pin together like I did here. This is another knife that we're going to make scales for, and this has got a hidden tang. The tang is the center point, the center piece of the knife. You can see here this is called a full tang. It goes from the top of the knife all the way down to the handle, and the tang is solid the whole way through. This is immensely heavier, far heavier than it needs to be, but it allows me to balance it very nicely in the hand. This one, on the other hand, has a hidden tang. The tang doesn't really go as big as you think it is. It's kind of just sneakily stuck in there. This is G10, another pretty commonly used knife material for scales. I'm gonna get rid of it because I'm sure it's made of poison. So I'm gonna take these off and make my own new block of it. I'm gonna layer up in order to do the actual linen on it. Here's what we gotta do, guys. We're gonna transfer you over here. Okay, here is a bunch more of the corundum that I've been finding. Now, this is in one day. We found all these wonderful pieces. Some big clunkers, some nice large pieces, but mostly what we found is tiny stuff, right? Because the tiny stuff gets a bad rep, but we're really gonna need the tiny stuff out here. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna go through and I am going to sort out the pieces of corundum that are, well, let's just say it. They're less lovely to look upon. I'll spray it down. Don't worry, I'm spraying it down with frankincense and myrrh. No, seriously. Frankincense and myrrh. More ingredients of tree sap and resins that are going to go into the glues. I don't know what that's going to do, but I'm praying for inspiration to understand how to make the resin to seal this up with, guys. Why did they bring Yeshua? Why did they bring Jesus the Messiah? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Huh? Think about it. Think about it. I've got all three just in case we need to mix that into the armor. I'm willing to play. If you haven't read about all the instructions for the priests and their armor that they were supposed to wear upon their body to gird their loins about with purple and scarlet and blue, I mean, it's all the colors of sapphire. It's all the colors of corundum that the priestly armor was supposed to have on them, and gold. They're supposed to weave in gold. I don't have a lot of gold yet, so I'm praying that the Father also helps lead me to gold, because we're going to need gold thread. And I found some places that make gold thread. But I haven't gotten there yet. Oh, Lynchpin Piece. By the way, I said this earlier. This is one of the most important pieces of the armor that the Father helped to bring to my understanding down in Florida and get a piece of, actually, north of Florida, in the Carolinas. I didn't find this. A dear friend of mine found this and left it for me. Wonderful gift. This is called Caquina, or Caquina. I don't know. Someone out there who speaks much better other languages than I do is going to correct me on that. But in St. Augustine, Florida, they made an entire fortress out of this because you can quarry it out of the ground. It's crushed up seashells. Sorry, I should probably start with that. It's crushed up seashells. You see all that? Look at all that. Look at all those different irregular shapes. Living stones. Look at all these different shapes, irregular shapes. You know what this is not? A brick. But when you cut it out of the ground, it's actually soft. Almost soft like a marshmallow. This should start ringing some bells with you guys about making giant fortifications out of semi-soft rock. You can literally cut this out of the ground, quarry it out of the ground, and it's soft almost like a putty. And then when you leave it out to bake, it hardens. Immensely hard.
well, that's just sand falling out of it, but not nearly as hard as this, because the seashells individually are not near as hard as this, but collectively, in this random form and fashion, they become incredibly supple. When high intensity, high velocity things come into contact with this, unlike stone, which will crack, if I just shoot this, it'll break. Ask people that have worn ceramic armor. Ceramic armor, which is the modern, most prevalent used form of body armor in the United States military and most militaries abroad, it's a ceramic plate, basically a dinner plate that they shove in your chest and under a soft body armor. So we're going to make the linen armor as our version, and then we are going to make potentially an add-up armor plate, which is made out of sapphire and corundum, irregularly powderized, to have a similar structure to this, because this is a much better shape. What this does, and what happens in that fort in St. Augustine, Florida, when you look into it, which is so unique, is it swallows cannonballs. I mean that, actually. It swallows cannonballs. Most stone, when you hit it with a cannonball, like castles, the reason castles went out of, enthused use is because when they started shooting those things with heavy, dense objects like cannonballs and giant heaved stones, they crack. And when they crack, they lose their structural integrity. They have the ability to then fall apart. Reference Jericho. Terrible decision. They put too many dead babies in their walls in order to make it stronger. Not a good idea. I know a certain London Bridge, and the Lords Mayor of London who do likewise. Reference the book, y'all. Go check it out. And my interview with Rob Skiba. We went into that a little bit more in that episode. But basically, these crack. They're hard, but they're not necessarily tough. If you really want toughness in stone, you need jade. And I only have one tiny piece of jade. Maybe I'll find that and bring that over here. But jade is really tough. You can hit it a lot against stuff, and it's a lot stronger. But hardness does not mean toughness. Diamonds and sapphires, though they're hard, if you hit this with a hammer, it's going to crack and break, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to find the pieces of this corundum that are not so pretty, maybe a little bit more muddy, and don't really look like a whole lot of anything. Really, guys, it doesn't look like anything but a muddy, dirty rock. But we're going to pulverize it and turn it into a powder that we can mix in with our resin and create a laminated sheet, which will have irregular, chaotic overlays of this corundum and the Moldavite and Tektites within it to give us the unique properties that this had when it was taking high velocity rounds to the face. The coquina, it literally softens and absorbs the round when it enters into it. So you can look at videos and pictures. Maybe I'll roll some of those in right now. What happens is the cannonball, when it was impacting the stuff, it would almost turn into that soft marshmallow-like consistency again, and it would swallow the cannonball. And there's some beautiful, amazing instances where that wall was almost getting harder and stronger because it was getting shot. Think about that. I want those same properties in my armor, because I also wanted to try to diffuse what's called the kinetic force, just the physical impact of having a bullet hit you in the throat. You want something that helps to cushion that doesn't just stop it and abruptly transfer all that kinetic energy directly into your body, because this is why you want padded armor behind your hardened armor on the outside. And this is where the linen comes back in, remember? The shields of the earth. Anyways, this is what I'm going to be working on. I'm going to start to roll in now a whole lot of stop motion of me doing all this sorting and then combining my sheets. Here, let me go grab them. Well, hello. I have sorted the corundum, and now I've got my pieces. You see all that? Maybe you can see it a little better.
Yeah, there we go.
Ah, you see? Now, I have a wide variety of corundum in here. Remember, this is the rough raw state. Some of it really looks like pretty and special, but a lot of it just looks muddy and really ready to take a bullet directly to its wonderful face, or a spear or a javelin or a fiery arrow. But now I've got that wide variety. This is what it's going to look like before. Now I'm going to go take a sledgehammer and start smashing this to pieces and powder. Once I get it down to a powdery, I don't know, relatively small, tiny mixture, then I will show you what it looks like before we start to shake it and mix it onto our linen. Come on. Now we're on our way. We're going to take our linen, we're going to cut it into strips, and we're going to lay those strips down, and we're going to epoxy, put the resin on it, and then we're going to lay on top of that our sapphire powder, and then we're going to put another couple strips on, okay? And this is our scrap pile of extra linen. So what's nice about it, and we learned in the book, was that it did not matter which quality of linen that you had. You could use your scrap pile of linen. You didn't have to use your super nice thicker weave or thicker thread count of your linen. Not all linen is made the same, but when you're just building a 1 centimeter thick block of it, which is what they determined to be about the most effective, physically usable armor, it'll actually soften over time and conform to the shape of your body naturally. But if you got too much thicker than that, it became too stiff and unwieldy. It wouldn't bend when you bent. And that's really important when you're in combat. You need to be able to bend exactly when you need to bend, and you need to be stiff when you need to be stiff. So we are going to layer these into different sections and mix in different amounts of the corundum. Some, I don't have as much of the Moldavite and the Tektites, so I'm only going to be using a little minute amount of this until the Father would bless me to be able to find mass quantities of this. I have to say, I did not find these, y'all, in the ground. I found them at a thrift store, at an antique store. I found these 2 huge specimens. These are called like splash form Tektites. I found these ones in an antique store when I was praying and asking the Father to give me treasures in an antique store. And I found these, thankfully, terribly cheap because the guy didn't have a clue what rocks were. And he was mostly selling baseball cards and other stuff. And then he had some fossils and rocks. I bought the fossils and the rocks, obviously, because destiny was knocking at my door and I was going to say yes and amen to the Father's will. But I got these at a gem, mineral, and fossil show back in Denver. Gem and mineral shows will tour around the country, generally in the warmer seasonal months too. And you can get these for about as bargain as you possibly can. But honestly, if you guys are needing these for your ingredients list for the armor, rough corundum will suffice. Muddier, the better. And the dusty parts that nobody else wants, like the micro crumbly bits that are leftover fragments, the tiny, tiny particles, the smaller the better, because we're just going to crush it, guys. We're going to need mills. If anybody knows about mills, we're going to need them. Water-powered, ideally, not electric-powered. We're going to need water-powered stamps and mill sites. Like I used to explore in Colorado, go around and look at places where you used to use water power to pound gold ore and get all the goodness out of it. We're going to need the same thing to just crush this. I'm going to use a sledgehammer because it's what I have available at my current area. We're going to crush this stuff, and we're going to use the Moldavites. You can get those micro Tektites, guys. You could order those in bulk, order bags of micro Tektites, and then you could just crush those. Order and then see about buying the smallest pieces of rubies or sapphires that you can. And the uglier, the better, because I think what's going to happen, y'all, is we're going to learn something about when we crush these materials in their raw and rough natural form instead of getting a synthetic version, which is why these are nowhere near as valuable as like the pretty gemstone versions that people see and think of in their mind when they see them, because there's an artificial form of corundum that is available and has been used for armor for a long time. Like you can actually see breastplates that pharaohs had thousands and thousands of years ago where they would have linen. Yep. They would have linen, and then they would put precious gemstones like these overlaying it. This should sound like the ephod of the priests of Yahweh, because if it doesn't, you haven't read your sword. Go sharpen up. Nothing is new that I'm talking about, y'all. I think I'm helping to separate, to connect the dots to a lot of these pieces that have been out there for a long time. This is the stuff that's always been out there, and we're just kind of reconnecting. We're kind of reconnecting these dots and getting it to a place of understanding. So what we're going to do is we're going to crush these and make our own. But modern men use something where they take the ingredient of corundum, which is aluminum oxide. The Reynolds wrap. Dang it. My family's been ahead of me on this for a little while, but I'm trying to redeem it. They take aluminum oxide and they melt it and they drop it onto a seed crystal. This is one of the methods of making artificial corundum. They drop it on a seed crystal of sapphire and then they pull out a boule. It's like a teardropped shape piece of corundum. And they have different methods that they grow it. They use this armor to create ballistic shielding for things like optical sensors and things like on the F-35 Lightning, the most modern and advanced fighting jet that people are openly, publicly talking about. They cover their sensors and their optics with sapphire windows. They've been covering helicopter gunship windows with this stuff since the 60s and 70s. And guess what? It's artificial. And that's a problem, because I think what they're doing in doing that is they're missing out on those micro minerals, the metal oxides that are also within the corundum that don't make it clear. Granted, they're not optically clear like the ones they make artificially, but we don't need optically clear for our armor. We just need it to be
armor. And I think all those random chaotic dispersions of the metal oxides and the silica dioxides is going to give us a similar effect here. Now, that's my theory, and that is what I'm going to be pursuing. Right. Well, I officially went out there into basically a garage and took a sledgehammer to all that corundum. And you know what happened? I discovered how brutality doesn't even stop the corundum. I took a pretty decent sized sledgehammer. It weighs 2 pounds. Doesn't sound terrible, right? Until you swing it 700 times. I'm exhausted. It's a little after 2 in the morning. By the way, Sapphire watch face. If you didn't know it, that's what artificial corundum looks like. Optically clear. This is a marathon watch. Go-to standard for me. I use it with absolute daily regularity. Amazing watch. Alumina oxide. Not the same, right? Let's check out my corundum experiment. Now, I basically laid some sheets of linen down because I want all the powder to go directly into my linen. So I laid down the sheets of linen that I want to use later on to catch that powdery corundum. And what happened though is as I pounded my way through it, I also realized I used my favorite linen that I was planning on using for the rest of my armor. But it's okay, I'm just gonna make knife scales out of it anyways. And I think we're getting that kind of plywood effect. Do you know what I mean? I'm crushing and pulverizing the linen directly into the corundum so that the corundum and the linen are becoming inseparable. I think if I had gold nuggets right now, I would also like gold crystals, ideally. Just the nice single crystals of gold. If I could add that into this mix right now, and copper and silver, but I'll get to that another day. If I could add all those into this, it would be mighty effective, because then we're getting into Faraday effects, and why part of the armor that the priests had and one of the powers of linen is this electromagnetic diffusion of radiation that it offers the body. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Basically what happened is I smashed the pieces out of this. And you know what? There's still a lot left standing because I can't just knock on a sledgehammer till 2:30 in the morning. People are tending. It's just not a good idea. I might wake the goats. I might wake the chickens. And you don't want to milk cranky goats in the morning. Trust me. They'll kick poo directly at your face. They're very, very good with their feet. Or they'll just step directly in the milk bucket at the very last moment. When you've just got it about full to the top, they have some sense of knowing, like, let me just completely ruin that milk bucket for you. I'll be honest. I strain it through linen and I drink it anyways. Full disclosure. I don't even mind telling you guys that. Anyways, back to corundum. I'm losing some unction in my gunction right now. I still have a long ways to go in this armor process, but I'm trying to show you guys the low-tech approach to all of this because honestly, I just got to tell you this. I have had this desire and this deep passion for years and years and years of my life. I have wanted to make armor so badly, like deep in my bones badly. I felt like it was just something I simply must do for my life to fulfill part of its purpose here. And I've wanted to have this very moment, this single night, absolutely night-long session, wavering towards Shabbat. I might just pull an all-nighter and wake up to Shabbat. That's the way to do it, because the Sabbath is where I get the downloads. Did you know that? If you really need a download of information, you have a day set apart for you to meet with your Father and have communion, like a community, like a relationship, like downloads of understanding and wisdom, and like you can seek wisdom. He says if you want wisdom and understanding, you should go and ask, but not be double-minded and doubt. Read James. Anyways, I always wanted an understanding of how to create a better armor than anything that existed in the world, present tense, because some of my best friends died because their armor was garbage. It was basically the lowest bid contract armor. Did you know this is how the United States military operates? You get the lowest bid for a job, which means doofus number one can get the contract when he has no idea how to make real good armor, and the better, superior product that could have actually made a difference instead, gets shelved. So there's a long story to that. Watch my video in Becoming a Gibborim called Soul Ties and Disney Lies. I talk about that a little bit and just the deep wounds that can come through that. But I've always wanted to make a better armor. And so, excuse me while I pull linen off my face.
I had this deep desire, and I thought it was going to go down. I thought it was going to happen finally in my life. Hold on. I'm getting a yellow flag. Yellow flag. We've got babies on the loose, and she might enter the shot at any given moment, which is fine. Just hang in there. But basically, I got offered an opportunity about 3 years ago. 2 years ago? About 2 years ago. No, right about 3 years ago, where I got brought on with a technology company to be their director of security. And I thought it was going to be like my dream job, you know, where I was going to have the opportunity to have access to a high technologies laboratory, because basically they had come up with a data storage technology that was classified by Los Alamos laboratories as highly disruptive, which means it was extremely dangerous for, you know, the corporate dragons and all, because it did data storage in such a way that it would completely ruin the data storage industry. It was fantastic. But that meant there's a lot of people who didn't like that. Mostly the same dragon Argonauts who kind of run those low bid contract systems. That being said, I really thought this was going to be like the way that the Father gave me the opportunity to go play in a laboratory where I had access to the means to melt down this and weave it into a fiber. That was my ultimate goal. I really thought that we could take Tektites and Moldavites and Sapphires and melt them into a fiber like they do with fiber optics. If you didn't know how you're watching this, most likely, is because, or having a communication with almost anybody, it's not because of, you know, the satellites that are all over the world, right? It's basically because there's cables all over the world. This is why cell phone towers work. Line of sight and cables predominantly. It's a really interesting thing, most perplexing. But they take sand, silica, much cheaper version of it. They melt it and they pull it into a thread, and then it becomes literally like a bendable, flexible child's toy now. That's fiber optics. Same principle with this. I thought, hey, you know what? They've been melting basalt rock and turning it into armor, and making thread and turning it into armor since, I don't know, the Cold War. So why can't we do that with this stuff? I thought that would surely be the way to do it. But then I realized it's non-replicatable. And the Father shut that entire whole operation down. I didn't have the favor. Do you know what I mean? The Father's favor didn't open that door, and it just didn't advance. Maybe in his time it will. But until then, I'm trying to teach you guys low tech, like a sledgehammer, a toaster oven, you know, this strainer. It's not the one I use to sift for my kidney stones. That's a different one. It sits on a different shelf in our house. I was trying to catch my own stones, you know, mix that in. Who knows? I'm trying to show you guys the low tech so that you guys can go do it yourself. And I'm really thankful today, because if I hadn't have done this, I'd have been playing with artificial nonsense and high technology versions of this. But instead, we're getting the raw, rough and tumble. So you see that? Look carefully. Oh my gosh, do you see it? Powdered corundum. Now, for those of you guys that may not have access to just rough corundum in abundance for low cost, I plan on hopefully the Father entrusting me the means to be able to acquire land that has mineral rights to wonderful corundum. And then we can start to get high quantities of this stuff, and then start milling it down and sending it out to you all who are doing the linen challenge, so you can make your own. But until that time, if you really must have it, you could also just look up ruby powder or corundum powder, because there's these guys who grind these stones for a living, and there's just powder at the end of these saws. Incredible. They use diamonds to cut sapphires. Just think about that. That's amazing. But they leave this stuff behind. That being said, I want it all impregnated with the linen. So I just layered a bunch of linen together and just started smashing it with a sledgehammer against a pad of concrete. And what I discovered is that, like, the corundum is outrageously tough to crush. It's got certain faces when the crystal is sitting, depending on how that crystal is sitting, where you can hit that face of that crystal over and over and over again, and it doesn't even mind. It almost like dents the hammer. No, really. My sledgehammer, hardened tool steel, dents all over it, crushed concrete, obviously savage linen. But then if it rotates a little bit and you get a fracture line, just turns to dust, which is most interesting, because if we make those same fracture lines, have irregular patterns all over them, what it's going to do when we mesh it together, it's going to create just this hodgepodge thing like the coquina, right? It's going to change the way that it can absorb energy as it comes in. Instead of shattering, it's going to allow that kind of to pass through. So that's my theory. We're going to test it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sift this to get as much of the powder down. And once I get the powder down, what I plan to do is then start to cut my sheets of linen, and then I'm going to laminate, and then I'm going to dust with my sifter here and make a nice little first pieces of armor. So stay tuned. Well, I'm making the armor. This is my Corundum pieces. I've crushed them with a sledgehammer into linen. This is my linen. This is my actual Corundum powder now. Next, I'm going to take my linen sheets, epoxy them, and then shake this sweet sapphire armor piercing awesomeness. Armor stopping. Just armor awesomeness. Mix it in. Well, I don't have the instructions for this resin because who keeps boxes when you live in a box? So I'm guessing you mix them together and go for it. So let's do it. You know what I mean? Give it a good stir. It smells like horrible toxic chemicals. You gotta figure out the pitch thing, but I'm not there yet. So we're just gonna start by getting it a nice coating. Linen absorbs just like crazy. So you have to saturate it, totally saturate it. So, I look forward to talking to you all more, and I hope you have enjoyed this first edition of Making the Kingly Armor. Be safe out there. And by that, of course, I mean live dangerously and wear linen.